and welcome to this episode of Unscripted. Today I am following around the police chief of Greenfield, Jeff Rasche, and we'll be in this building, the police department, today. Take a look. So I'm here with the police chief of Greenfield, Jeff Rasche. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for letting us follow you around today.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem. It's always interesting to see what goes on in the police department. So let's begin. How long have you been doing this?
So I began my law enforcement career back in 1984. I was 18 years old, hired at the Sheriff's Department. I have literally done nearly everything at the Sheriff's Department in the 34 years that I worked there, other than being the elected sheriff. So, but it was a very good career, very fulfilling career. Just recently I left there and started a new venture over here at the police department for the city of Greenfield. Totally not even in my on my roadmap to something that it wasn't something that I wanted to do. It was like someday I want to be the chief of police, or someday I want to be whatever. This came, I really believe, as something that came to me rather than me coming to it, and it's been very fulfilling so far. And so, after 34 years at the Sheriff's Department, I started here in January of 2017. So I've been here just a little over a year and a couple months. And so it's a whole different ballgame from what I came from. I really thought there would be a lot of similarities. There are in a lot of ways, but in so many other ways it's very different.
Right. So what did you do over at the Sheriff's Department, or what was one of your favorite things?
Yeah. Well, I spent most of my career there as either a detective or the captain in charge of investigations, and so that has really been my heart and soul throughout my career. I have spent the least amount of time actually on road patrol for whatever reason, and because of the time that I'd spent in investigations, it's really not about what you know, it's who you know. And I think I used that to my fullest extent. I think this morning you heard me talking with some detectives still over in Indianapolis, and those people being successful as a detective is so important to build those relationships with people throughout the state, even in multi-state areas. And so that was probably, my passion was really trying to help people in a different way than being what a beat patrol officer would do or a deputy sheriff would do. Now, both of those are very fulfilling and rewarding to me, but to help someone, as an example, in a homicide case, someone's loved one has died. Now it's our job to find out who killed that person, and so there's nothing more fulfilling, rewarding to be able to do that. And I remember in 2005 making a promise to a 6-year-old boy that I promised him I was going to find out who killed his dad. And ultimately I was able to do that. And so, it wasn't until many years later I was able to do that when he got older, and he came to me actually and wanted to thank me for what I did for him. And so, today I talk about that, and it brings chill bumps.
Mm-hmm.
It's very powerful. And so, so that was probably my, not investigating people getting killed, but the challenge of investigating crimes, I think, was probably my niche throughout my career, and then before I came over here. So
right. So let's go back now. What got you interested in being in law enforcement in general?
Yeah. So I graduated from New Palestine High School in 1984, and prior to graduating, I was a volunteer firefighter for a little while. I can remember back then. The fire whistle would go off on top of the firehouse. It was near the school, and the teachers would look at me and say, "Aren't you going to leave? Aren't you going to go?" So they knew what I did. They knew I was a volunteer fire, and they would let me leave to go do this. And so, I got involved and met a lot of the county officers, whether it be at an accident scene or fire or whatever. And so I thought, well, this is kind of cool. So I started riding with some of the officers and got to know a few of them very well. Well, shortly after I graduated from high school, they had an opening come open for a dispatcher. And so everybody there knew me, including the Sheriff Gulling, and he brought me in, and we started working together with some of the other dispatchers, and he hired me full time. So that's really how I got started, and then I went 2 years as being a dispatcher. Now, the interesting thing about as times have changed, you start out. We had a phone, we had one frequency, one microphone, and we had one phone line. 911 wasn't in place. We did not have computers, so it was really kind of the Stone Age from what we see today in law enforcement. And so, we had a handwritten log. I still, every once in a while, get those out and look at them. It was a spiral notebook that we had a stack of them. You'd fill it up and you'd set it aside and you'd get another one out. And, we just hand wrote everything. And so compared to what we have today in the technology, it's just crazy. But so I worked there for 2 years. Then I went into the jail, and I worked in the corrections part of it. And I got to experience the old jail that we used to have, which was about a 12-cell jail that held about 16 or 18 people at the most. And so I remember in December of 1984, Christmas time, we had one inmate, and he and I played checkers together all night long on Christmas Eve. And so, that's kind of how it went, and it's, since then it's changed. But, so then, and when I turned 21, and just after I turned 21 in 1988, I got hired full-time as a full-time patrolman, full-time deputy, and then went to the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. So that was kind of how I kind of cut my teeth into this field. I never ever would have thought in a million years I'd still be doing this after 34, 35 years, but...
Right. So what do you plan on once you're done? You probably still have a little bit while to go as police chief, but in retirement, what are you looking at, if you're looking at it?
Well, the funny thing is when I came here, my plan was to work at the time 4 more years. That would have put me at age 55. I was going to be able to draw my full pension from the Sheriff's Department. And then my plan was to go someplace and not carry a badge or a gun. And I didn't know what that was going to be. I'd kind of been looking a little bit in the private field, whether it be corporate security, something like that. What else am I going to do? I'm a retired police officer. I never finished my college education, which I completely regret today. But I'm okay with what I've done. I've had to work hard for this, but you know, I don't know. There's a lot of opportunities out there. So when this job came about, like I said, it found me. I didn't find it because I wasn't looking. It's kind of redirected things for me, and you know, I look at people and officers specifically that kind of came on in my time frame, and I look at when I was a young officer, how I looked up to certain people, and I completely believe today that I wouldn't be where I was if I didn't use those people as building blocks throughout my career. And you know, they mentored me, they led me down the road to do right things, and they really paved the way for me to have the morals and ethics that I have today that I can now give back. And so now I see myself here unselfishly as being that person for younger officers, because you know, I could name 5 people right now that really shaped me for who I am today. I wouldn't be nothing if it weren't for those people, for those officers, leaders. And so I feel now that since I've been led over here, that that's really my job, is to try to be that person that they were to me. And so I don't know how long I'll stay here. You know, I as long as my health is good and the mayor wants to keep me, then that's fine. But I'm very content. I feel very good about trying to be that person to all these men and women here that, you know, where I learned. So that's kind of my goal here.
Absolutely. And you know, I was thinking maybe once you're done here, you could just go to the fire department and get a job there.
I don't know. They, you know, that job has changed a lot too. But you know, we like to give the firemen a hard time about, you know, their recliners and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, we've got our donuts. They've got their recliners. But,
exactly. I personally like the donuts better.
Yeah, I do too.
So I asked the mayor this the other day. There's a lot of events after as well. How many things do you do outside the job?
Before I came here, really, I really didn't do anything for the community. I wasn't a volunteer. I didn't take part in boards, serve on different boards. So really, you know, I didn't do a lot. I don't have any children. I have nieces and you know, I have family that live here in this community, but. You know, I look back and I was, you know, selfishly, I did my own thing. I played golf with friends and did this and did that, and I'm interested in you know, running and stuff at the time. But now, since I've been here, it's really opened up a lot of neat and really ideas and some things that I never knew existed. And so I have now the opportunity to serve on different boards. The Talitha Combe home that they're getting ready to open. I'm on their board. I try to stay active at the landings, which is a really good place for teens to go that are struggling with whatever issues they are struggling with. There's the soup kitchen, another good example of what goes on here behind the scenes that the average Greenfield citizen probably has no idea that's going on. And so it's really neat to see really how caring this community is and how willing they are to give. And so, you know, the mayor is like, he is an all-star when it comes to sponsoring events, helping with fundraisers. And so he's really helped to get me involved in some things that I'm very thankful that I am involved in now, and it's very, very fulfilling.
Mm. So what would you want to tell people who are watching this that might be looking into the law enforcement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. I have people contact me often, and you know, obviously when I came into law enforcement, it's completely different than what it is today. But you know, I can't not stress enough a college education, and you know, a lot of people, it's difficult. It's difficult for people to fund it, to you know, to make sure they're taking the right things. I could be, and again, I'm not second guessing, but I could be, with my experience now, if I had that college degree, I could be doing, making twice as much money and working at a much larger, whether it's a private firm or larger police department. But I'm okay with where I am. Like I said, I've worked hard, but today, whether it's coming to work to be a police officer, a firefighter, or a banker, it's going to take hard work and dedication and commitment. And I cannot stress enough how important it is. Just keeping it the simple ABCs 1, 2, 3, morals and ethics, the things that people get caught up in today. Some people don't realize, but Facebook or Instagram or all these social media things, those things are there with you forever. And so when people get stupid and they post some of these things, it's difficult to sidestep away from it. Back when I was growing up, it was somebody else's word as to whether or not something happened. Today, people like to post it, unfortunately, on social media. And so, like I said, it doesn't matter whether you're going to come to work to be a police officer or where you go. It's good and always important to realize that establishing that moral character early will build the foundation to a much stronger person. And it's always that mindset, in my opinion, when I try to mentor either young officers or people who want to do this, is to say, you got to start early. You can't, like I said, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube per se when you make bad decisions early in life, because it's going to follow you and affect you forever.
Right. So what are some of the perks that you've gotten from being in law enforcement?
Well, everybody jokes all the time. You walk into McDonald's and they're like, oh, so you get your food for free since you're a police officer? Well, that is something that we're not supposed to do. Although it does happen. People, especially in this community, they're very outpouring. People, I have been since I've been here, I've had my lunch bought for me. I don't know how many times, just by anonymous person bought my lunch, and I don't know who that is. And so what I do is I try to return the favor to somebody else that I know or somebody that I invite to lunch. Those are the little perks, but the opportunities that I have had throughout my career are just so amazing. Whether it be travel to a state that I've never been to pick up someone that we had an out-of-state warrant for, or whether it be a training opportunity. We've been on a number of trips to deliver supplies and goods to communities that have been affected by national disasters, hurricanes, flooding, and so forth. I've built relationships that way. I have friends currently still that I communicate with in Louisiana, in New Orleans area, when they got bombarded down there with the hurricanes. We actually made a trip down there, a once-in-a-lifetime event, by seeing downtown New Orleans with no electricity and driving the streets, the flooded streets, and with the officers and patrolling and helping people that needed help. They couldn't get enough help down there. And so we were able to travel with something interesting related to you is Steve Jefferson from Channel 13 found out that we were down there. We hooked up, and they attached themselves to us. And so they went all throughout where we went, and they were able to not only see what we were doing, they were able to better describe, not only through video, but they were able to describe what we were encountered, the problems, the struggles that we had. They better could describe the conditions and the smell and all the things that I don't think about as a first responder, that they had a different picture of why we were there. So if that makes sense. So there was the humanitarian issues that we were able to deal with and help so many. And it was amazing while we were down there, so many people were so thankful for us. They couldn't, it was difficult for anybody to eat a hot meal in a day, but yet there were people that came in and donated food and set up shop to feed us while we were there, and give us gasoline and different things like that, so we could do what we needed to do. So that was pretty cool. Been down to South Florida before for hurricanes, but my most, I think, treasured thing that I still I'll never forget was the FBI holds a quarterly training for outside law enforcement, and it's international. It's internationally known. But you have to be hand chosen in order to attend this academy. It's a 12-week training academy held at their FBI headquarters in Quantico, Virginia. And back several years ago, well, back in about 2008, I was chosen. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go because of a manpower issue, but I got back through the list in 2014. And I'll never forget getting the call from Wendy Osborne, who's kind of the FBI director, the FBI agent that was in charge of the Indiana chapter. And she says, "Jeff, we got an opening. Would you be interested in going? It's been since 2008 since we contacted you." I said, "Most definitely." And so what this is, the FBI puts this on, and what their goal is to build relationships with local law enforcement all throughout the world. And so what I didn't know, I mean, I'd heard from a couple of other officers that have been, but I was only the second one to go through it from the sheriff's department. And when I went, I knew what it was about, but I didn't know the magnitude of it. I didn't know how powerful it was actually going to be. But to meet 211 executive level law enforcement officers from around the world, from all these foreign countries, we had students there from Israel, from Afghanistan. All these problem areas in the world that we see on TV, there were police officers that were there. And so we were able to learn new cultures. We were able to learn what they deal with on a day-to-day basis and compare that to what we have here and what our local struggles are. What was the most impacting thing is the humanitarian side of it. And the problems they face with employees, just like we face with employees. And so we were able to go through a college level curriculum, writing papers, getting up in front of the class and doing speeches and doing all these things just as you do in college. And it was really neat because we were able to learn from each other, but we also learned ourselves from the research and the study that we had to do. And so, like I said, only 1% of all law enforcement officers get this opportunity to attend this. And this certificate here on the wall is a really nice certificate, but it doesn't speak volumes for what I learned. I had my roommate, I never will forget this, pulling into Quantico to Marine base, and so you have to go through all the security and so forth. And so I was checking in. I got there really early, and there was a couple cars that were following me for whatever reason. They ended up being classmates. So I went up to the desk and I checked in, and he goes, "Here you go, sir. Here's your room key, and here's your information." And he goes, "And this guy right behind you," because we had to give name tags. He goes, "This guy's your roommate." So how ironic it was, the guy that came in right behind me was my roommate. So we talk probably once a week. We communicate often, and we build those relationships for reasons, and we use each other. Back last year in May, we had an unfortunate incident here where we had a arrest-related death. We had tased an individual. He subsequently died, and so it was a difficult time for our department, difficult time for me as the chief of police to lead us through that storm, that large storm at the time. But I was able to lean on those shoulders of my friends that I've made from 4 or 5 different states. They have experienced these things. I had not, and so it was really comforting to be able to take their advice, lessons learned, and use that to get us through this storm here. Because otherwise, I would have probably done it a lot worse than what I did. But those relationships are really good. Got to meet so many different people, so many famous people while we were there. Trips to DC, up to Philadelphia, And it was just an awesome experience. I was ready to come home at the end of 12 weeks, but we wish now they would have like a retrainer where we could go back to DC or go back to Quantico and do that again, because it was a great experience.
It sounds like it, and especially being able to meet people outside of the state and especially around the world. It's just a fun experience, and you can't get any better than the FBI either.
Definitely.
So that's cool. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure. Great having you guys here, and I really appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that is it for us here on this episode of UnScripted. I want to thank Jeff Rasche as well as Greenfield Police Department for letting us film here. Don't forget you can catch this episode on YouTube. Have a great day, everyone.